What if the reason you're broke isn't a lack of money, but a lack of understanding? The story you're about to hear contains the hidden financial laws that have created wealth for centuries. Laws so powerful that those who follow them never stay poor. You've been trapped in a cycle of debt, stress, and missed opportunities. But what if breaking free was as simple as following a few ancient principles? This isn't just a book, it's a financial awakening. And once you hear these lessons, you'll never look at money the same way again. The rain drummed steadily against the window, tracing winding rivulets down the glass as Daniel Turner stared blankly at the unopened envelope on the table. The letter bore the unmistakable insignia of his landlord. He didn't need to open it to know what it said. Final notice, eviction imminent. His chest felt hollow. It wasn't supposed to be like this. He had done everything society told him to. Went to college, worked hard, paid his bills. And yet, here he was, 35 years old, broke, drowning in debt, and about to lose the tiny apartment he had called home for the last 5 years. His phone vibrated, a message from his sister, Emma. "Hey, Danny, just checking in. Hope you're doing okay. Love you." He exhaled heavily, his fingers hovering over the screen. Should he tell her? Should he admit that he had barely enough left in his account for a cup of coffee? That he'd skipped meals this week to make his paycheck last? Instead, he typed back, "All good, Em. Just a bit tired. Love you too." Lying had become second nature. The weight of exhaustion pressed down on him as he leaned back in his chair, eyes drifting to the bookshelves lining the wall. His gaze landed on a dusty old book wedged between two forgotten novels, The Richest Man in Babylon. He frowned. Hadn't that been a gift from his grandfather? He vaguely remembered the old man handing it to him years ago, with a knowing smile. "Read this, Danny. It'll teach you everything school never did." At the time, Daniel had tossed it aside, dismissing it as just another self-help book filled with outdated financial advice. But now, with nothing left to lose, he reached for it, brushing off the dust before flipping to the first page. By the time the clock struck midnight, Daniel was still reading. The words of Arcad, the richest man in Babylon, seemed to leap off the page, speaking directly to his failures. "A part of all you earn is yours to keep." That one sentence made his stomach twist. Was that his problem? He had never saved. Every cent he earned was spent on rent, on credit card payments, on food, on subscriptions, on nights out with friends. And when his car broke down last year, he had slapped the repair cost on his already maxed out credit card. No wonder he was sinking. He turned the page. "Control thy expenditures." Another punch to the gut. How often had he justified his spending? "I deserve this," he would tell himself as he tapped his card at coffee shops, as he upgraded to the newest phone, as he ordered takeout instead of cooking. But the truth was, he didn't deserve to live like this. No one did. He shut the book, pressing his fingers to his temples. Could it really be that simple? Save first, spend second. He had always believed that wealth was for the lucky, for the privileged, for those born into money. But what if wealth was just the result of good habits? He swallowed hard and glanced at his bank app. Balance, $42.17. He had nothing to save. Or did he? The next morning, Daniel sat at the kitchen table with a notebook and pen. He wasn't going to let this book be just another forgotten lesson. If Arcad could turn his life around in ancient Babylon, then Daniel could do it in modern-day Chicago. First, he wrote down his new rules. Save at least 10% of every paycheck. No matter how little he made, he would pay himself first. Track every dollar. No more mindless spending. He would know exactly where his money was going. Cut unnecessary expenses. Did he really need 4 streaming services, a gym membership he never used, daily coffee from the expensive shop on the corner? Find a way to earn more. His current job barely covered his bills. If he wanted to break free, he needed a better source of income. It wasn't going to be easy, but neither was staying broke. As he flipped through the book again, another passage caught his eye. Gold laboureth diligently and multiplieth for the wise owner who finds for it profitable employment. He tapped his pen against the table. If he ever got his finances under control, he couldn't just save. He had to invest. His money needed to work for him. But first, he had to get out of this mess. That afternoon, Daniel did something he had never done before. He called his credit card company and negotiated his interest rates. He explained his financial hardship, and to his shock, they agreed to lower his APR. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Next, he pulled up his budget. Cutting back would hurt, but it was necessary. Cancel gym membership? Done. He could run outside. Limit eating out? Done. He'd meal prep. Pause unnecessary subscriptions? Done. He barely used them anyway. By the end of the day, he had freed up an extra $150 per month. Not much, but enough to start his Babylon fund, a small savings account where he would put his first 10% away. It felt strange putting money aside when he had so many bills to pay, but something about it felt right. He was finally in control. A week later, an old friend, Jake, invited him out for drinks. "Come on, man," Jake grinned. "It's been ages. First round's on me." Daniel hesitated. He had budgeted only $20 for entertainment this month, and a night out would easily blow past that. For the first time in his life, he said, "Nah, I'm good. Rain check?" Jake gave him a weird look but shrugged it off. Walking home, Daniel felt an odd sense of pride. Saying no wasn't as hard as he had thought. He was done being broke. 1 month later, his savings account had $200. 2 months later, he had saved $500. By month 3, he had built an emergency fund and paid off one of his smaller credit cards. It wasn't easy. There were setbacks, unexpected expenses, moments of temptation, days when he questioned if it was worth it. But then he'd pick up the richest man in Babylon again, and the words would remind him, "A fool and his money are soon parted, but a wise man, he makes his gold multiply." For the first time in his life, Daniel wasn't a fool. He was on his way to becoming a rich man. Hey, sorry to interrupt. If you're enjoying this story so far, consider hitting that subscribe button. Your support truly means the world to us. All right, let's continue. 3 months into his financial transformation, Daniel found himself facing an unexpected challenge: his job. He had been working as a customer support representative for a tech company, barely making enough to cover his bills. But now, with his new money mindset, he saw the glaring issue. He wasn't earning enough to ever build real wealth. A man's wealth is not in the coins he carries in his purse. It is the income he buildeth. Arcad's words echoed in his mind. Saving was great, but he needed to increase his income. That evening, he sat at his laptop and searched how to make extra money. The internet threw a million options at him. Freelancing, gig work, selling things online. It felt overwhelming. But then he saw something that made him pause. Copywriting. He had always been good with words, and companies paid people to write advertisements, blogs, and social media posts. He spent the next few days reading articles, watching free YouTube tutorials, and practicing writing ad copy. Then, taking a deep breath, he signed up for a freelancing platform. It was time to put himself out there. Weeks passed with no response to his proposals. Doubt crept in. Maybe he wasn't good enough. Maybe this was a waste of time. Then, one night, an email popped up. "Hey Daniel, I liked your pitch. Can you write a blog post for $50? $50. Not a life-changing amount, but it wasn't about the money. It was proof. Proof that he could create wealth outside of his day job. He poured his heart into the piece, making sure it was perfect. The client loved it and left a glowing review. That review led to another job, then another. By the end of the month, he had made $500. For the first time in his life, he wasn't just working for money. He was making money work for him. Things were finally looking up for Daniel. His savings were growing, his side hustle was bringing in extra income, and he felt more in control than ever. Then disaster struck. One evening, his boss called an emergency meeting. "I hate to say this," the manager sighed, "but the company's downsizing. We have to let some people go." Daniel's stomach dropped. He already knew what was coming. "Unfortunately, your position has been impacted." Laid off, just like that. Old fears crept back in. The version of him from 6 months ago would have spiraled into panic. But now, something was different. He had savings. He had a plan. And he had the richest man in Babylon to remind him. Gold flees the man who entrusts it to those unskilled in its keeping. He wouldn't panic. He would adapt. Instead of rushing into another dead-end job, Daniel made a bold decision. He would try to freelance full-time. It was a risk, but for the first time in his life, he believed in himself. He doubled his efforts, refined his skills, and applied for higher-paying projects. The first month was rough. Some clients ghosted him, others paid late, but he kept pushing. Then a breakthrough. A marketing agency hired him for ongoing work, $2,000 a month. More than his old job, more than he thought was possible. For the first time, he wasn't just surviving, he was thriving. With his new freelance income, Daniel felt like he was finally in control, but one thing still weighed him down: his debt. Credit card balances, student loans, and old medical bill, altogether it was nearly $20,000. He turned to the richest man in Babylon again. "If you owe a man a great sum, do not shirk from it. Instead, repay what you can, and soon the burden shall be lifted." Inspired, he created a debt attack plan. List every debt from smallest to largest. Pay the minimum on everything except the smallest one. Throw every extra dollar at that smallest debt until it was gone. The first month, he cleared a $500 credit card balance. The next month, he knocked out another $1,200. The momentum built. Each paid off debt freed more money for the next one, and with every extra project he took on, he inched closer to freedom. After 10 months, the final loan was gone. No more payments, no more interest. For the first time in his adult life, Daniel was completely debt-free. Now that his money wasn't being drained by debt, Daniel faced a new question. What next? Akkad's wisdom gave him the answer. Gold laboreth diligently for the wise man who finds for it profitable employment. He needed to invest. Daniel researched stocks, real estate, and passive income streams. Eventually, he opened an investment account and bought his first index fund. It wasn't much, just $500 to start, but it was a seed. And like Akkad taught, seeds grow. Month after month, he continued investing. A year later, his investments had grown to $10,000. He was no longer just earning money. He was building wealth. One evening, Daniel sat on his balcony, watching the city lights twinkle below. It had been 2 years since he found the richest man in Babylon, and his life was unrecognizable. He was debt-free. He had 6 figures saved and invested. He ran a successful freelance business. But more than that, he felt at peace. His phone buzzed, a message from his sister Emma. "Hey Danny, I'm struggling with money. Any advice?" He smiled. The same way Akkad had shared his wisdom, now it was his turn. "Let's grab coffee," he replied. "I have a book to lend you." As he reached for the richest man in Babylon, he realized this wasn't just a book. It was a roadmap to freedom. And now, he would help others find it too. Daniel's story isn't just fiction. It's a reflection of real struggles and real solutions. If you've ever felt stuck in a cycle of debt, living paycheck to paycheck, or wondering why financial success feels out of reach, remember this. Wealth isn't luck. It's built through habits. The lessons from the richest man in Babylon are timeless. Pay yourself first. Control your expenses. Make your money work for you. You don't need a high-paying job to start. You don't need a lucky break. All you need is a plan and the discipline to follow it. Daniel changed his life. So can you. The first step? Take action today.